Yeah, so this is what we, at least I kind of whimsically call Conversations with Todd. It was really based on a very popular book series many years ago called Conversations with God, and I just thought it reminded me of that. Although I don't get the two confused, although some people say I do, so maybe. But anyway, so that's kind of where it started. It's not really a conversation, it's an opportunity for those who are around to ask me some sort of question, maybe about something I've spoken of or not spoken of that you're curious about. I don't like to do church business stuff. That should be reserved for business meetings. But otherwise, I'm pretty open. Dara, would you mind if Shelley were to give you a microphone, if you would walk around with it for those who might have a question? I wanted to first, though, respond to something that you had in your opening words. Here it is. This is a beautiful question. Can we as a species go on without hope? And that one really struck me. And I would say, yes, we can as a species go on without hope. In fact, a lot of us are going on without hope right now. But we cannot go forward without hope. We cannot progress without hope. Because hope is that which gives us a belief that we can achieve the possibilities that we hope for. Hope is that which gives us the sense of agency, that what we hope for is something that we can achieve. Hope is not passive, meaning we just sit around hoping that things are going to get better. Hope is not something we project onto another person, onto a hero who's going to come in to save the day, upon a politician who's going to be elected, upon a new president. Hope is something that we have in ourselves and in our relationships with others, that we as individuals and we as collectively have the agency to create the future we want. So yes, sadly, we can go on without hope, but we cannot go forward without hope. And that requires, as to paraphrase Eric Fromm, which I cited a few weeks ago, is what is exemplified when we put our own shoulder against the door trying to slam itself shut and hold it open with all faith and force when everything around us tells us to let it slam shut. It's a wonderful metaphor. Okay. Thank you for asking that question. I may respond to it again second service because I think it's such a good one. Oh, Alan, go ahead.
Something came up in my reading in the last week or two, and you might answer it. Is there any particular differences between postmodernism and something I've come across called post-structuralism? Or are we just talking hoo-ha?
Well, I can't answer that because I don't know what post-structuralism is. So I would.
Well, the French are responsible for it as far as I can figure out.
Well, it's Greek to me. So sorry I can't get to it. Yeah, I could say a little bit about postmodernism, but I won't go there. So yes, Karen has a. Oh, there's another mic. We have two mics. Good. Brilliant, Darrell.
It is 72 days before the next election. And rather than talking specific politics, I'm wondering what your sense is of the country's mood right now.
Yeah, well, it seems like the country, the majority of the country, from what the media is reporting, are not happy with the way things are going. And that we will at least get one house flipped. I mean, that's my hope. Most I can do is vote, so that'll be my work there. But it seems like that is the direction it's going to go. So, as I said, just a little close to 2 years ago now, after the last election, that my guess is that we would have midterms, and there would be a at least one house would be flipped, and we could get back to good old gridlock government working the way it's supposed to work. So, so I think that is what's going to happen. I feel surer about that prediction than I do anything else. Now, this also could be a bifurcation point in politics, right? If enough people have paid attention to what voting for someone who is crazy, just because they're willing to defy reason and logic with crazy statements, in the hope that they're going to radically change things by destroying them, is a lesson learned, because that impacts all of us, not just the people we think are our enemies because they think differently than us, and if only we could get them under control, what a wonderful world it would be, rather than, as the Enlightenment Project says, we need to create a world where people can get along with lots of different ideas and we don't demonize each other. And that is the world we need to create. And I think that has to happen. I mean, we have been involved in a political system now for really since Reagan, that the parts of it that worked really well, but the flaws in it have started to accumulate and are catching up with us. So the idea that you shouldn't have any government spending at all doesn't work. You shouldn't have any government regulations at all doesn't work, and that's caught up with us. You shouldn't have fair tax systems at all. That is catching up. We just saw just this week, right? $40 trillion deficit, and how are we ever possibly going to pay for that, right? So this is a system now that is becoming so broken that historically there's often some sort of major shift in how we do things and how we look at things. I don't think the socialists that are getting elected, a democratic socialist, is going to be that system. I think that is another idea that people have, that might be the radical thing that will fix this. And so you have a lot of people rushing towards that, and could be problems for some of the traditional Democrats, or maybe some of these folks that can get elected in a primary against another Democrat, but not necessarily against a Republican in a general election. So, I'm a little worried about that as a person who wants to see things shift much more differently than that. But I do think that we are on a verge of a larger political transition. And I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, to be honest, but I think that's coming. In the meantime, in a couple of months, we're going to hopefully flip one house. And as I said, if we have a gridlock government, what a wonderful world it would be. Just someone who can put the brakes on. Yes. Ooh, Dara will bring you a microphone.
Hi, I was intrigued by the reading. Is it Lisa? I have that right?
Yep.
And the discussion around truth and building on truth. And I have found myself back on my heels a lot in disbelief of what has been going on in the world. So, trying to figure out what truth is, how do you determine that? And what do you do with all the different interpretations of truth? How does that coexist?
Yeah, so like most people, I have a feeling, and then I describe that in some framework, some linguistic framework, and then I become certain that it is the truth, and I try to force it on everybody else. And I think they're evil if they disagree with me. Okay, so truth is, truth is an epistemological problem, right? The truth is a philosophical, perennial problem, because we cannot know what the truth is. So I don't think so much about obtaining the truth as I like to try to discover the truth, right? So that I'm living a life where I'm perpetually questioning and wondering and trying to learn more. Right? I mean, if you think about the vastness of the universe compared to the size of a human being, which is, I mean, if I were to say, it's like being a microbe on a microbe on a microbe on a microbe, I could possibly put 1,000 microbes, and still not explain how small we are. We're very dense creatures. We don't understand much of anything, right? Because we're not exposed to much of anything. It's much better to try to live in a world where we admit we can't know the truth. And that I often say that, make your next leap of faith, because that's everything is a leap of faith. But make your next leap of faith your best educated guess. So at least I am trying to apply some tools of logic and science and some of the disciplines that maybe help us get more in touch with what it is we are groping in the darkness to ascertain and connect with, that is outside of us, outside of our subjective interpretations and unconscious responses to the world and to others around us. So that's what I mean by making it an educated guess. But it's more important for us to become tolerant people, especially when it comes to the ideas of others, so that we can live in a world where we can work together. I mean, if you think about almost all, if not all, the conflicts that are going on in the world today, it's over some sort of ideological differences. The split in this country is also one over ideas. It's just ideological differences. Part of the Enlightenment project, one of the key tenets of it was tolerance. And that did not mean that we have to agree with each other. It didn't mean that we have to like each other, but it meant we have to live together with each other. And that means that everybody, no matter what they believe, no matter what they say, no matter what they think, they have the same rights and should have the same securities as the rest of us. That's how societies progress. That's how societies open. And when you think about it, of course that's how societies progress. That's how we move forward. Because when you're free to express yourself, to think outside of the collective box, unlike Galileo, who was locked into his home for the rest of his life for thinking outside the box, when we are free to think outside the box, we innovate, because our thoughts become innovative. And that is why the 1800s are still considered the most innovative time in human history, because that was the immediate aftermath of the Enlightenment, in which those ideas were being put into practice for the first time. And virtually everything that was invented in the 1800s, including the foundations of today's technology, including computers and whatnot. So I would say that rather than trying to know what the truth is or what is true, I would figure out, to the best of my ability to have integrity with myself, how do I determine if I'm fooling myself or if there's something like what I'm thinking there is outside of myself. Make that a life of discovery and a journey. And it becomes very exciting, it becomes very mystical, there's lots of awe, there's lots of wonder, there's lots of breakthroughs, there's lots of advancing and evolving and changing. Wonderful way to live life. But fundamentally, I think it's most important to accept that we can't know the truth, that nobody can know the truth, and that our ideas don't make us right, let alone righteous. So, yes, we have a question. Back there, we're giving Darrell some exercise this morning.
I was on a trip recently, and someone asked, we were talking about churches and things, and I said, started going to a Unitarian church, and they said, what's that? I'm like, well, there's no crosses, and you're going to go to hell if you don't do this and that and whatever. But otherwise, I didn't know what to say. So I was wondering if you could give me a nice answer to give to people.
Yeah, you just made it sound like it's a place where vampires would feel comfortable. So we only meet at night. No, that. Yeah, that is really a good question. It is the elusive elevator speech that Unitarians have been seeking for some time. Now, it is a lot more complicated. It's a good question, and I will directly answer it. But I want to say a little bit about the history, because in 1961, two religions, Unitarianism and Universalism, formed the Unitarian Universalist Association. And as anyone who knows me and have read my controversial book should know, that I think that was a mistake, because there were some major unresolved differences between those two religions that had flirted with joining for over a century, but did not, because they could not resolve those theological and class differences. So if you think about differences that keep people apart, theology and class are pretty big, right? So those were unresolved. And what I believe happened is, because the leaders of the new association did not want those divisive issues coming up again, they stopped talking about the respective past and rich histories of both of these religions. And they became more and more nebulous over time, so that we have people, I mean, one of the last surveys I saw from Unitarian Universalists about what our faith is about basically ended with the folks who took the survey concluding basically all of our membership believes that our message is important in the world, and it is very needed in the world right now. We just have a difficulty articulating what that message is. I mean, that's almost verbatim, right? So that caused that opened up the doors for for institutional capture, for some people who were not Unitarians or Universalists coming in, feeling some kinship, but pulling the authoritarian card for exactly what I say. They don't believe everybody should be able to express themselves freely. They have one idea about how the world ought to be and what our religion ought to be about, and they have captured the institution. So Unitarian Universalism is unrecognizable. I couldn't tell you what it's about today, even if I could have told you something about perhaps what it was about 5 years ago. Okay, so I have come to just call myself a Unitarian, and because I feel much more akin to not only the roots in Eastern Europe, where it started it formally started in the 1500s, and that was a result of the Renaissance, right, where there was so much war and violence going on because of the Reformation, and prior to that, tolerance was a sin. I mean, it was considered an absolute sin, to get back to your question, because nobody could imagine how could any community get along with each other if nobody agreed, or if there was disagreement. Surely there would be war and hostility and fighting. It was actually a crime, often punishable by death, for somebody to talk about tolerance. People were just sure that was a bad formula. You're just asking for it. We all have to think alike if we're going to get along. My God, isn't that just human nature? Well, some of us are proving that today, that seems to be how a lot of people feel. But because after 100 years of brutality and bloodshed, one of the Renaissance ideas was, maybe we should give this tolerance thing a try. And the first to do that was a group in Transylvania by a prince named John Sigismund, who got all the religions together and had a conference and said, I like the Unitarian idea. I'm going to be a Unitarian. My kingdom's going to be a Unitarian. And then immediately issued the first Religious Toleration Act in human history that said everybody gets to believe what they want. Nobody's going to be punished for their religion. No ministers are going to be exiled or punished or removed from their post because of the things they say. And that was really the beginning of Unitarianism. Its very root is tolerance. Now, that didn't last long, sadly. The king had a horse carriage accident, was killed, and the Catholics took over, and so much for that. They grandfathered the old religions that had been accepted in, but they actually passed what they called an anti-innovation law. So nobody could say anything new, or they'd be punished. And in fact, Ferenc David, the Unitarian bishop, was in fact arrested and put in a dungeon and died 6 months later, right after that happened. But when in the U.S., when the United States was being formed, if you will, a lot of the leaders were Unitarian in their thinking. They were humanist, really, and they called themselves Arminians, which was an old, I think, Methodist heresy. Arminianism was the idea that we're not necessarily born in sin. We're all born with the capacity to do both good and evil, which was very unique, that humans, because you can't believe in human agency if you don't believe in human goodness. Right, so they were talking in this way, and they called themselves Arminians at first, and then realized that they were Unitarians, because the Unitarianism classically really means a humanistic Christology, that you believe Jesus is a human being, not a God. So there again is the idea of something being divine, humanity itself being divine, or having a very positive attitude towards it. So they started calling themselves Unitarians, not because they really believed in the Eastern European theology, which is still a very Christian religion in Europe, but it became sort of the religion of the Enlightenment. And all of the things that came out of that were dignity, right? Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, never treat another human being as a means to one's own end. They must be considered an end within themselves, which was very eventually translated into what's made it into our democratic constitutions, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. So really, I like to say that Unitarianism, in brief, to answer your question, at long last, is rooted in human dignity that is maintained by the cultural tools or technologies of freedom, reason, and tolerance. So that's it. Dignity maintained through freedom, reason, and tolerance. And when we talk about freedom, we mean both the freedom to express oneself, the freedom to think for oneself and to speak for oneself, but also the freedom to participate in the benefits of societies without prejudice. Okay? And then reason is, definitely it is about thinking well, but we're not necessarily meaning everybody should learn logic and become a logical thinker. Please do, you should. But it's about the very ancient philosophical belief. Remember, the Renaissance was founded on the pre-Socratics, right, from 2,600 years ago, the first principles thinkers. And so for them, reason, the belief was that human beings are born with the ability to think, to reason, to figure things out, right? That's what made the pre-Socratics great. They were the first to try to understand the world in natural rather than supernatural terms, and came up with virtually everything science had to rediscover after the Dark Ages. So that level of freedom was brilliance. But the point is that it goes back to tolerance again, right? I have to trust that you can think for yourself. We don't need a king to decree what it is we're supposed to believe, or a religious authority to put out creeds and dogmas that tell us what we have to believe. Each of us gets to decide that ourselves, because we are thinking beings who can reason. So it is really about the respect of one another to hold their ideas without interference. So freedom, reason, and then tolerance. And I get this a lot. People say, well, tolerance isn't a very high bar, is it? I mean, shouldn't we really love one another? Shouldn't we embrace one another? Shouldn't we really try to dig in and understand what everyone else thinks and why they think it? Hell no. There's billions of people on this planet. Are you kidding me? We're never going to get anywhere if we have to do that. There's a very simple tool, tolerance, which simply means live and let live. Right? The only thing I have to know about you is you're another human being. And therefore, you get to live next door to me if you want. You get to live in my neighborhood if you want. You get to go to the same schools, and you get to work in the same places and walk the same neighborhoods, and you get to share the same rights as anyone else. So So yeah, tolerance is not a high bar, but it's the only one, and I think the Enlightenment thinkers were right to stop there. I mean, if you end up in a community with people you thought were very different from you for a very long time, yes, you'll learn to love them. Because that's how it works. That's why integration works so well, forcing us to live together and realize that we're the same, ultimately. But that's not the goal. The goal, tolerance, just says you got to be in the same neighborhood together. That's it. And it doesn't matter how different you are. You can't hurt each other. You can't harm each other. You gotta treat one another with respect. So, long story short, Unitarianism is, an ancient religion, really, that formally began in the 15th century, that is rooted in the idea of human dignity, that is upheld through the social technologies of freedom, reason, and tolerance. And I've run out of time. I'll do one more quick question, if there's a quick one. If not, it's like bun. Oh, did you have a follow-up? Okay. Well,
This is
it's
totally
not
different.
up to you if it's quick. It's up to me, I'm
okay.
sure, because that's...
So this is totally different. It's on like a worldwide scale, I guess. I heard on the radio, I don't know the name of the news station, but it comes on in the morning. It's more open-minded news, worldwide on animals, the economy, the state of the world, water, people, climate, everything. And it was saying that there's a couple of countries that have formed their own pact, so they don't have to listen and worry about the U.S. helping them out. And it was, I guess, based on someone talking about the fact that current U.S. politics are like, if you don't do what we say, we'll bomb the mess out of you, and then if you don't do it, then we'll enforce, unbelievable economic sanctions to bring you in line with what we want to do. Sort of like the world bully. I think that's what we're becoming.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if you think that more and more countries are going to start pulling away, finding other ways to solve their problems. So after a while, the U.S., they won't need the U.S. They'll say, so what?
Yeah.
But you say, we don't need you, we can solve our own problems.
Yeah, I mean, really, really good question. And you're right, it's a long one, so I'll be as brief as I can. Yeah, I mean, the Trump administration has certainly escalated a level of consciousness around what is the role of the nation state in the 21st century. And so things may escalate a little bit around that. But this has been a looming question that has been, the urgency of which has been increasing, I think, over the last probably 20, 30 years. And that is largely because of the advancements of technologies that have brought the world together. So communications technologies, transportation technologies, information technologies. There's so much that makes us a global species and a global community right now that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to divide us according to nationalities, which are like dividing us according to race. It's insignificant, right? Those are insignificant differences on a global scale. So we really have to create a world where there are international laws and international rights and international enforcement of those laws and rights. We saw it in this country, back in, shortly after the Dust Bowl, right, where there were migrants that were being solicited. They had hope, sort of a false hope, to go out west, and they were going to be able to overcome the poverty that they were experiencing after the destruction of their farmlands. And we had to invent the right of people to move across interstates and cross state lines as Americans. Right, there were no laws protecting that, and so there were states that were abusing people and mistreating them, and all of these sort of horrible things that happened to these immigrants they couldn't even go to the same schools. They set up migrant camps and migrant schools and wouldn't let them mix with one another, and they couldn't go to hospitals and be treated by hospitals if they were injured. There were, just It was just like what we see on the global scene right now, the same sort of attitude that because you're from a different country than me, therefore you don't have a right to cross into my country to make your life better. And, we have different ways that divide us and all those sort of things. We can't live in that world anymore. Because one, it's just inhuman, right? We're a human family. We cannot live in a world. I saw a report earlier this week about some country, I can't remember which one, where it's just routine for these armed criminals to go in and kidnap people's kids and run off with them and take them hostage. It's routine. We don't see our country interfering with that, right? Because why would we care about those children? We'll make abortion illegal in ours because we love life and we love kids, according to those proponents. But, we're going to go bomb Iran for some unknown reason, and yet we're not going to interfere with these kind of injustices where our families, our people, because that's what they are, no matter what they look like, no matter what color, shade of skin they are, no matter where they're from, no matter what they believe, what their religion, what their politics, those are our brothers and sisters. Those are our people. And that's the world that we have to create. And I think the world is demanding it. And a lot of what we're seeing, including the Trumps and authoritarians that are coming in trying to maintain the status quo, is a result of trying to basically hold the dam from bursting. Because we no longer live in that world. We just don't have the systems or language to articulate it yet. And that's what we have to erect. Okay, so thank you. Good questions, I thought.